I basically tried to plan the year because you don't have to do this, but I basically quit my job to travel full time. I wanted to make the most opportunities, connections, and what I could do with the year.
Off-Gassing, a scuba podcast with host Nick Hogel. A year where opportunities were created, friendships were made, knowledge was gained, a year that changed her life. When Jenn Thomson received a call from GUE founder and president Jarrod Jablonski informing her she was the 2022 recipient of the NeXtGen Scholarship, she knew she had to make the most out of this once-in-a-lifetime chance. In part 2 of her interview, I speak with her more in depth about her travels, different courses, responsibilities, and her future with Global Underwater Explorers. Please enjoy. I would like to welcome back the wonderful Jenn Thomson for part 2.
Hello, thank you so much.
The first question I actually wanted to ask you is, so you just traveled from Dubai back to London. How were your travels?
Oh, no, it was so good. Thank you. Incidentally, I traveled via Albania for a few days because I realized that traveling spontaneously from Dubai to London was really expensive. So it was a couple of £100 cheaper to go via a country. So I just did that. So that was very beautiful. But honestly, it is so much colder here. I am definitely a warm weather person. I mean, okay, no, I say it can be cold, but it needs to be worth it being cold, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I do understand that. And how long is your stay going to be in London? It's London, correct?
So it's actually Newcastle. So I travelled up to Newcastle, so in the north of the UK, yesterday. And I'm here for, I think, like 3 weeks. I'm actually going back to Egypt, which I'm super happy about because it's warm. No, I really love it there. So I'm going to go back and just kind of work remotely and dive at the same time, which I'm super happy about because I guess my new role affords that. So it's very nice.
That does not sound like a bad gig.
So incidentally, I've never actually been in the UK, like diving in some of the famous spots. Like I really want to at some point. So there's a place called the Farne Islands, and the seals like come and play with you. Not really, but like they hang out. So I really want to see them at some point. But who knows if I can get in the water? It's still really cold.
Yes, I am not much of a cold weather person, so I definitely am feeling you there. So it's awesome to have you back on to go a little bit more in depth into your scholarship year. And I was wondering if you can kind of take me through that. You know, maybe we'll do a month by month or just kind of where do you want to start, and we'll go from there.
I think we talked about, if I can remember correctly, last time about really why I applied and what the year entails. So I guess as a basic recap, the organization Global Underwater Explorers has recently started putting on a scholarship for one applicant around the world. At a very basic level, it is free training for the year. So in that, you get a mentor, which is based on your geographic location, but also your needs and desires at the time. So my mentor was Dorota, so she's the vice president, but also really wants to encourage more younger divers, recreational divers, and the next generation of instructors. And part of my application was talking about the need to kind of change the perception of GUE, as it were, because I saw all these technical and like rec divers, but I never saw somebody, I guess, like me, who's more into scientific diving, recreational diving, instructing and training the next generation. So that's what I based it on. So we matched up. I was living in the Middle East at the time, and so was she. So it was perfect. So yeah, you get free training for a year, and in the months before 2023, so November and December 2022, I basically tried to plan the year because you don't have to do this, but I basically quit my job to travel full time. I wanted to make the most opportunities, connections, and what I could do with the year. So I basically quit my job and spent my life savings on traveling and diving. So you don't have to do that. You do get a travel budget of $2,000 per year, and you also get a Halcyon dive gear budget of $3,000. So I spent those $2,000 of travel on different flights in the first half of the year, and I spent my $3,000 on the basic setup because I didn't have any of my own gear. So I got a wing and backplate as well, and I was very lucky in the fact that I made friends along the way, and Dorota gave me like her old doubles wing, and I got a new pair of jet fins from different people. So that was kind of the first step. So yeah, I guess I'll basically just start with my first official month, which was in January. So in January, I went to a place called Scuba Seekers in Dahab. And the guy that runs that, Samir, he is a GUE instructor, and he saw me at the GUE conference where I went as kind of my first outing as a scholar, and he offered if I wanted to come along and just dive. And I said yes. It was really good because I had no expectations or wanting to do any courses there at that time. It was literally just me diving for a few weeks. Twofold the reason for this. The reason for it being that in order to get from, for example, like your level 1 to level 2 courses with GUE, for example, if I just completed my fundamentals course or a Rec 1 course, let's say, in order to get to your recreational 2 courses or any other courses at that same level, you have to do 25 experience dives in the GUE configuration or anything. And I did not have that. So for context, I applied to GUE with my GUE fundamentals recreational certification. And I needed to do 25 GUE dives. So that's what I did. So it was really good. It was really cold because I hadn't done a GUE dry suit course then. So I was so cold. It was about like 18 to 20 degrees. And I was wearing like a wetsuit, 4 mil wetsuit, which was probably realistically 2 because it was very old and cheap. But I loved it so much. And it really helped me. Honestly, it was so cold. I think as well my thermal tolerance has decreased because now I wear a dry suit, and I was just there in Dahab and it was about 22 degrees and I was cold in a dry suit. So yes.
Quick question for you. When you decided where to go first, I mean, you literally could have went anywhere, but you obviously chose to go to Egypt. Was that because you had met him at the conference and was like, okay, this will be my first destination? Before you went into it, did you have any other places in mind that you maybe thought you would go first?
Ooh, good question. It was a mixture of the two. In the few months before I started to travel, I began putting together a rough plan in my mind and kind of like a pathway of what I could do. Dorota was really good at helping me with this. And I think I said on the last podcast as well, we basically formulated the same plan for me at the same time. So that's how we knew we were like a good match for each other. So I went to Scuba Seekers because I had actually done some research about GUE premium or GUE dive centres around the Middle East at the time, and I saw that Egypt was really good in the fact that they were really active, they had a really strong community of GUE divers there. The water was super nice all year round, so even though it was, quote, there like winter or off season kind of, it was still, I guess, warm enough for me in a wetsuit, just barely. But also the water was super calm and it was a really good training platform. And as somebody who started off the year as not a confident diver, I really wanted somewhere to kind of ease me back into diving and the whole GUE setup. So I just thought it was a really good way to do it. So I had it in the back of my mind, and then meeting Samir at the conference and him basically inviting me over reaffirmed that decision. So I think it was a good first stepping stone.
Now you're in Egypt, you're doing your dives. Is that where you started to conduct training in Egypt?
No, so I left there because I went to live in Dubai for a month to see Dorota as well, but also meet some of the GUE community over there. So I did my first few training courses in the pool in Dubai called Deep Dive Dubai. Again, I did that because I was offered to come and stay and hang out for a few times. And I really, again, wanted to do some training where I was in a more controlled environment at first before I started to go. Because when I tell you I was so scared of diving in a dry suit, I thought I was going to like float away. And it just so happened that Dubai was a really good stopping off place. So I mentioned before that I want to change the perception of GUE in terms of building up a community of more recreationally minded or more scientific divers, foundational level divers. There is, so you've interviewed her before, so Jenn Thomson is the recreational administrator, and she was invited to come over for a week. And for her to fly Singapore to Dubai was super easy. So she came over, was conducting some training with some of the staff over there who were getting their instructor upgrades for their recreational 2 courses. So I got to basically be the student that they taught on that course. So I did my gas blender course in Deep Dive Dubai. I then did my doubles primer, my dry suit primer, and my photogrammetry course. And then being a student on the Rec 2 instructor upgrade courses, like in this massive 2-week block all at once. It was a lot, but it was super, super cool. And I wasn't even going to learn doubles, but I'm so glad I did. Yeah, both of those things were, it was like mentally challenging, but now it's perfect. But it was my 200th dive, and it was my first dive with Dorota, my mentor, and she just wanted to see me dive. And we were doing some basic skills and things like that. And I remember her writing on her wet notes, like pulling it out and just like drawing little smiley faces on, because I was getting really like annoyed with myself because my body positioning in the water, I was basically overcompensating from wearing a wetsuit and not diving, I guess, trying to maintain that good trim posture for a long time. So I really needed to work on activating certain muscles and bringing my legs down and basically activating my core and all these things. And it's something I've really struggled on, that getting to be completely flat for a long time. And I finally just cracked it, I guess, a few months ago. Been a work in progress, but she's been amazing in teaching me more gym exercises or how to move your body and how the body behaves in the water, so your proprioception. And so we were working on a lot of these things before I did these courses in deep dive. But I always remember coming out of the pool on my 200th dive, and she said to me, now, apart from everything, what was wrong? Apart from everything, but like, what specifically was wrong? Oh my gosh, I love it. But no, so those sessions, joking aside, were super valuable. So we did, I guess, our own kind of workshops during my time at Deep Dive, which was where I could film myself, because along this time I was learning how to use, for example, Premiere Pro and different video editing software. Obviously, GUE has a strict policy on not allowing the video footage from classes and skills to appear on social media. Now, I did a lot of videos throughout my year, but I used footage of courses either during courses, before or after the skill was performed, or in workshops like I talked about, where I would do the skills and we would film them. So I guess that's how I got lots of content. So yeah, so long story short, I did 4 courses and lots of workshops myself.
Okay. So when you went to Egypt, you went to go dive there. What was the lodging situation? Is there lodging close to the dive center? And then the same in Dubai. So like if I wanted to take a trip there, do you have recommendations on where to stay?
So I guess on both places, and what I'll talk about is like a real mixture of things. So in Dubai, first of all, I stayed with one of the instructors who works there. And again, this is like a shout out to the GUE community. Everyone is so lovely. I literally got a message from several people saying, hey, I know you're coming. I have like a spare sofa bed, couch, spare room. Come stay with me because I know it's expensive. And that happened quite a few times throughout my scholarship year. So I was like so grateful for that. But I guess in terms of places in Dubai, I stayed with a few friends who are dotted around the city. In terms of public transportation links, if the people you're staying with aren't driving, I just got like a taxi or shared cars with people to get there. So the transport situation in Dubai is super well connected. So there's not a real one particular place I would recommend to stay, just mostly, I guess, in the northern part or as close as you can get to deep dive as possible. So, and then I guess the same thing with Egypt. So a few times I've stayed there. I stayed with friends, incidentally, friends I made on social media, which was amazing. I got a few messages from this lovely, at the time, complete randomer who saw my profile on social media and reached out because she was a young scientific marine biologist studying in the Open University in Dahab. And long story short, then I got to stay with her. And so she had a spare room. And so it just goes to show the power of the community and social media. But then as well in Dahab, everything is literally walkable. So, and Sama as well, he has a guest house that people can often stay in. And for example, if you do like Airbnb or any other hotel or hostel situation, most things are within 10 minutes walk to the dive center. So super accessible.
And then just a quick question. You said that when you got to Dubai, you started getting into Premiere Pro. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And is that specifically for the scholarship year, or is that something that was like an outside hobby that you wanted to grow?
Oh, yeah, good question. So, as part of the deliverables for the scholarship, you have to, well, there are several things you have to do, but they mainly want you to showcase your year and promote GUE. And you do this via blogs, YouTubes, and several articles that they request. So, for example, I was doing a journal article in Quest, which is the GUE membership, I guess, medium, and then I did a few articles working with In-Depth and Dan. So In-Depth is kind of not strictly affiliated with GUE, but it's more of their informal blogs, as it were. And then in that, I also kept up to date, I guess, in social media. So I did every month, I did a blog post and I did a YouTube, which is on GUE's YouTube channel. And so I had never like made YouTube channel videos before. And so I had the option either to send any of my footage or videos to one of the guys who works and can edit videos. But I guess, really wanted to learn and do it myself because I guess if it's rubbish, I can show the evolution of me learning. And B, I thought it would be super fun to learn because I always love going back over photos and videos of my travels. So I basically picked a program and self-taught myself how to make YouTube videos, which was useful because I could post them on the GUE channel.
So I'm trying to get into the video editing side, and I know the two big, or there's a few big ones. There's Premiere Pro, and then there's DaVinci something, I can't quite remember. So it just out of curiosity, why Premiere Pro? Was that just kind of the one you were introduced to?
Mostly yes. It wasn't like I analysed every type of video editing software. I think I heard, I might be completely wrong, but I was under the impression of my very limited research that Premiere Pro was easier to get into than DaVinci, but DaVinci is easier to do more technical stuff in like the long run. And also when I opened up the softwares, I already had, for example, I've worked a bit on like Adobe Illustrator and Canva before in several other jobs. So I guess the Premiere Pro was an easier barrier to overcome in terms of entry, even though it looked quite complex when I opened up all the software. But I literally, again, a very good thing about staying in Dubai for a month was I could use like their offices and places to work in Deep Dive just to hang out and just to get people's opinions from their social media team, and also just have the space and time just to play with different softwares and yeah, try out. And everything is Googleable. So
That is very true. Very true. Okay, so and then back to you just completed the 4 courses. You're in Dubai. What was your thought process for the next step?
so it was very much serendipitous. So I was basically going to NASA in March, which was so weird to say, and I kind of still comprehend that I went there. But I was basically killing time before going there because I got a really good deal. Again, this is very good with the scholarship money that I had. I had the freedom to use the money on different forms of transport, and I got a really good deal on a flight, which was literally, I think it was like 18 hours from Dubai to Houston. And it was at this very specific time in March. And so I was wanting to stick around the UAE for a few weeks before I went to NASA at the end of March. So I actually, at the same time, I was reading a Quest article, which again, so that's like the journal article that GUE writes. And in there was an article from a marine biologist called James Campbell, and he was based in Fujairah, which is on the eastern side of the UAE. And he was talking about how he was using, for example, GUE methods or GUE values in terms of his ecosystem conservation or monitoring projects for the local government. And so I basically emailed him and was like, hey, can I come? And he was like, yeah. So I got, again, free accommodation and I guess helping out the team as an honorary member of staff for those few weeks, because I knew in March they needed to do a lot of ecosystem assessments in that area. So I basically went along and helped the team for a bit, and I got to see another side of the UAE and do some more diving over there, and also got to dive around a peninsula in Oman, which is kind of on the tip, which is separated from, I guess, the mainland part of Oman, called the Musandam Peninsula. And so that was super beautiful. So yeah, so my main port of call were just basically getting experience in different types of scientific diving, hanging out in the UAE a bit more, and then I went over to NASA, which is super exciting. Yeah, so my background is basically in marine biology, hence why I want to use this year to also get more up to speed with terms of scientific diving and different ecosystem or marine biology internships as well, just to basically get experience. And also I've done a lot of work on the side in the space sciences, which it does have a tangible link, which I love. It's also, I guess, one of my hobbies. And I have done a few bits of work in the past, working with different other space agencies. And again, at the GUE conference, I basically was talking about my future ambitions to merge diving with space and marine sciences. And just so happened that there was a guy there who used to work at the Neutral Buoyancy Lab in Houston. Long story short, I emailed him, he emailed someone else, and I got to go for a week to Houston.
That's absolutely amazing, especially because the community, how it's just opening the doors for you. My question is, so you wanted to combine marine science and space science.
Yes.
What's the link between the two?
In terms of exploration and things like that, you often hear people say that in order to push the boundaries of exploration, we're putting a lot of effort into, for example, deep sea exploration and things like that. In terms of a human aspect, in terms of like the perseverance and the way that the human body is challenged to meet these extreme environments, can have a lot of parallels with the space environment as well. And also some of the technologies I know that some people are developing has a few parallels. For me personally, I really wanted to see like the diving link. I know it's not the same, but I really wanted to figure out how we can use diving as a tool for exploration. And I've done a lot of diving expeditions where there have been, for example, deep sea submersibles and things like that. But I was also getting into looking at diving as a tool for space analogs, because people use neutral buoyancy as a way to simulate microgravity in other environments. So I have done a lot of studying in the past on various extreme environments. And one of these, I really wanted to make that link between both environments. Now, neutral buoyancy is not the same as microgravity, but it was super interesting to see how the astronauts and the divers positioned themselves in space and moved with the dive configurations in the big pool in Houston to simulate what it would be like in space. So I guess in a very high level sense, I just want to showcase diving as a tool for exploration in all biomes, because again, there is a lot of talk about how we should be focusing on the Earth and forgetting about like the space environment, and also people saying that we should focus on, the Artemis missions and the moon missions. Whereas I think by working together, we can develop and communicate and work as a team and get technologies that can help all aspects. So I want to just harmonize these two areas.
At the conference, did you get a chance to meet Bill Stone?
I did. He is so cool.
Yeah, because I think he's kind of doing similar stuff, isn't he? Where he's using underwater exploration to push space exploration?
Yes, so he is using, I guess he's pushing more autonomous vehicles to the next level. He has certain projects, and I think he's calling it like the Sunfish Project, or I can't quite remember the name of it. And we can look it up afterwards. But yes, he is basically looking at using autonomous vehicles in terms of like cave diving exploration, and then can we use this to look at our knowledge of other habitats and other planets. And there are people doing this in other areas as well, especially, for example, biospeleology and looking at environments and cave divers exploring unmapped cave systems and finding different microbial lives over there can be a proxy for seeing how extreme life can survive in other planets as well. So I feel like it's definitely a space to watch out for as well.
Do you have a plan formulated on how you'll move forward in that area?
So at the moment, I am in active talks with several. I've done this for the past few years as well. I've talked to several, I guess, private agencies that help to solve this problem and want to connect both the marine and space sciences. So there is a company who is looking at building big pools as well in both the UK and the US, and they're called Blue Abyss. And for example, I've been an ambassador for them for several years, and basically they want to make a huge facility that can not only have on-site hyperbaric chambers, but also on-site hypo, and microgravity simulation suites. So it's an area where, people can test submersibles, people can go scuba diving, we can test physiological experiments on there, and also astronauts can come and train. So it's more so getting all these disciplines talking, and I feel like collaboration can lead to a lot of breakthroughs in areas for all of exploration. So yeah, I've been an ambassador for them for a few years now, and still ongoing and talks and different things. But a lot of these companies, if you want to go in there as a diver, you need to be an instructor. So I am wanting to become a GUE instructor first before I push my desires to move into kind of this mix of environments.
Going off of what you said about becoming a GUE instructor, I would assume, was that part of the plan at the very beginning that you made when you mapped out your year?
Yes and no. So I always had this like goal in my head, but I was literally wanting to use the scholarship year as a way to get the prerequisites for registration. And then Georgia was like, yeah, we can do an ITC in May. And I was like, can we though? I don't think we can. And she was like, yes, we can. So I made a plan in order just to try and get some of the prerequisites for that registration. But then suddenly I was going to Sardinia in May to do an instructor training course. So it was, but then it made it more real, as you like. So I had this idea to go to Italy in May. And so all the things that I was going to do would lead up to that, interspersed with various, I guess, internships, as I was talking about before. So yeah.
You had the 4 courses. You were in Dubai, and then you went to NASA.
Yes.
And then where to after NASA?
So I went to NASA for a week, and I went into the neutral buoyancy lab, and there I think again I talked about this on the last podcast, but I was there to see some topside and also look at some astronaut training runs with the ISS and looking at how they move in the water and how the different divers work as a team, either filming the runs that they do or also acting as float divers. So they basically have to put the astronauts' body full of different foam in different places because their perfect trim position is a 45-degree angle, I guess, facing their workstation. So they're not flat at all. And so they need to really work on their trim position in order to stay at that level. And again, it's hard because you're compensating with the gravity or the weight of the suit, which is different, which is how neutral buoyancy is different to microgravity. So they have to put on all these foam in different places. It's called like the way out. And so every astronaut is different, and they have, depending on your body composition, you have to put foam in different places. So it's basically the opposite of weighting a scuba diver. So instead of putting weights in different places, they put like foam in different places. So it was cool to see like that process and how like the divers would help the astronauts as well. And for example, if in the dive plan an astronaut was picking up a certain tool, the diver would help them do so. For example, if they were picking up a wrench, they need to feel the weight of that and how it would move in space. But of course, you have the drag of the water. One of the safety divers would swim in and help the astronaut pick up this tool. It's called a microgravity assist, like in quotation marks, because they're simulating how it would feel in microgravity, aka not as much weight. So they literally have this like play of the astronaut moving different tools, but the divers helping them with different tools. And yeah, it's super interesting. So I guess I was there looking at that for a few days, and yeah, so that was the end of March. And then in April, I went over to Seattle for a week. So I went from Houston to Seattle.
Tell me a little bit more about the time in Seattle.
Seattle, again, was spontaneous, and I wasn't planning to go this far. I guess I wasn't planning to go to America at all because of finances, but I couldn't say no to going to NASA, so I was in the area. I was in the continent. And one of the individuals, HQ, Davina, me and her, we got on like a house on fire as soon as we met. And she invited me over to stay with her and then just hang out and see the GUE Seattle community, because it is, I think, one of like the largest and one of the most, I guess, active GUE communities. And it would be a good time to test out my dry suit in cold water. So I did. And so I went there and I dove in the sea with like dry suit and doubles for the first time. It was super cold, and I was only there for a week because I went back to Europe to do another course. But when I was there, they have a lot of younger individuals in their community, which I guess GUE typically has an older age range than I guess me and some of my peers. And so this is different in Seattle because there's a big, I guess, upcoming younger GUE community. And so when I was there, we put on a weekend trip, which was amazing. And we put on a few evening dive sessions, and also for me to do a talk at their affiliated dive center. So that was, I guess, more about community building, and it was super nice. And one of the individuals as well, like they commuted 8 hours from Vancouver just to meet me. I was like, guys, I'm not that important. But it was super nice to meet all these like young individuals and dive together. So yeah, community building was the theme of that experience.
Okay. And how long was your time in Seattle?
I think it was just over a week. I think it was like a week or 10 days or something. Not long at all, because I basically then flew to Croatia to do my recreational 2 course. And so I had like this gap of that time. So I was cramming in my time in Seattle. I wish I could have stayed longer, honestly. Everyone was so lovely and I did not want to leave. Also, like I never got to go hiking around the Washington state, and so I really want to go back there one day because it's stunning. But yeah, so I had to leave. I guess I was doing 2 courses almost back to back. I was doing my recreational 2 course in Croatia and my scientific diving course in the Netherlands. And this was in the month of April.
So now you're about a quarter of the way through the year of your scholarship. How was the month of April?
Honestly, I think like one of my favorite months because the courses that I was doing, I really wanted to do. So when I applied to do the scholarship, I had to put down, for example, I think 3 courses, which were like your top choices. And I think I put down Scientific Diver as one of them. I think I put down Rec 2 as well, because I really loved the idea of enhancing those skill sets. And I loved the sound of that course. And I put down Photogrammetry and also / instructing experience ? Like that's what I put down. So I was like proud of myself for making this all happen. So in the recreational 2 course, I went to a little place in the north of Croatia called Konica. I don't know if I pronounced that right, I'm sorry. And it was a super secluded place, but it was so beautiful. And it was a really good chance to meet other divers. And the Rec 2 course was really interesting because I learned a lot about line laying. So the recreational 2 course has more or less 3 components. There is your navigation component, and it goes a lot further than, I guess, what I learned before. What I learned before is like, here's a compass, go straight, turn back. But we were doing like triangles, we were doing like different patterns underwater. Then I was doing a lot of line laying work, which actually is really helpful for individuals considering their cave courses, because I learned about all the different types of tie-offs that you would do. So I really love that. We were then doing different rescue scenarios, and this helped me eventually get my technical upgrade, which wasn't part of my scholarship yet, but it was really useful to see how you would rescue somebody still staying in trim, but for example, wearing your doubles and dry suit configuration. And then we went out on some boats in the local reefs area around there, and we're doing more deeper courses. So again, I think that was my first time I went to more or less 30 meters and practicing ascents in the dry suit as well. So I love that. Yeah, so that was Croatia. I really wanted to stay again, but I had put these 2 courses in, so we had to, I think I got like 3 buses and 2 trains, like traveling like up Europe. And then I arrived. I think as well, I accumulated a lot of stuff and like dive gear at this point. When I say I had like 70 kilograms worth of luggage, I had like a big duffel bag and I had like 2 suitcases, and trying to get up the steps in Croatia to get to this bus, I must have looked like a sight. But I eventually made it. And then I got to this place in the Netherlands called Zealand. So the instructor for my scientific diving course was a guy called Eric, and he was so kind in like he met me off the train station, because otherwise I don't know how I would have got to this place. But he met me with his van out of the train station in the Netherlands, and then we road tripped together across the country to the islands. Yeah, let's call them the little islands off the west of the Netherlands called Zealand, and we did the scientific diving course there. And that was so nice. I didn't know what I expected from the Netherlands, but it was surprisingly very, very beautiful. Visibility was interesting at times, but we were in shallow waters and lots of like oyster fields and crabs and different types of algae, and so it was a very beautiful place to dive actually, and I really enjoyed it. And there it was super interesting because, again, I think I talked about like the scientific dive on the last podcast, but we basically build up all of our skills. So, we were making different types of transects, making different types of survey plots, working with all the types of transects. And so as every time we went into this dive, we looked more and more like a Christmas tree, because we had so many different types of GoPros and cameras and quadrats and transects, and so it was super fun. I would say as well, this dive site had like the most amount of stairs I'd ever seen, and Eric is basically twice the size of me, twice the height of me, and so he was like running up these stairs really gracefully, and I was struggling with these stairs. And so I think one time we filmed a time lapse of me going up the stairs, and I looked hilarious. So no, it was super fun, super chill, and it was great fun. So we had a lot of laughs in our team, and I learned a lot as well.
So you completed the 2 courses. Did you already have the next courses lined up, or was it kind of what was in store for May?
So May was the ITC. So I went and we did it. Yeah. So I would say though, I had planned pretty much what I had envisaged from January to, let's say, beginning of June. So that was all planned out. So I knew kind of where I was going, what I was doing, the courses. And then from June onwards, it was kind of free time, but I'd started to make plans as I was going through that year based on the experiences I had. I knew I wanted to basically plan the first half of the year in detail and save kind of the latter half for either, I guess, staying somewhere if I had like run out of money, or any other connections that I had done, because I knew I wanted to still travel as much as I could financially and make the most of it. But May was super exciting because May was the ITC course. That was amazing. That was like, I guess, one of my most rewarding courses. I think part 1, we talked about the holistic nature of the GUE instructor process and how they not only mark you on the skill sets and how good you are in the water, but also the way you deliver the courses, your personal skills, your ability of making an impact within the GUE community, personal fitness. So there's a lot of different components to it. And I rocked up to the course thinking, I don't even have like these prerequisites. Like, what am I doing here? And then I went away thinking, okay, cool. Within a few years, I can see this becoming like a tangible, realistic goal. So that was really amazing. And also meeting other individuals and hearing their stories of why they wanted to become a GUE instructor as well. And then I guess that took up let's say the first half of May, and then the latter half of May, I was still staying in Sardinia, and I was making a recreational project there for some seagrass surveys. And instantly, so what we started to do within this year is we started to make a legacy project. And this all happened in February, where I went basically and spoke to Jarrod and Dorota and said, hey, like, you guys have done so much to me. Can we just pay it forward and not just have, I guess, one person having this opportunity? I know we can't maybe at the moment sponsor multiple people for multiple scholarships, but can we make a program where we have a community of young scientists, younger divers, and maybe, for example, the top 5 or 10, or we have a bunch of deserving candidates, let's call them, for example, trainees, and they get some sort of personalized help. And so this all came into fruition. So it was really cool to, I guess, starting to spearhead that. And instantly, one of the trainees that we picked that year was in Italy at the time. So we invited her over. Her name was Elizabeth. She was an aspiring marine biologist. She did her fundamentals. And then we basically worked on producing a small documentary about creating projects for young divers. And so that was super cool to do. And then after that was more of a creative trip. So we had several brands that had reached out to GUE divers wanting to make us shots or apparel shots or diving shots based on the technology or gear we were wearing. And so I also helped out on that as well. So for those like 2 weeks after my ITC, I was basically meeting some other young scientists, helping make videos on setting up scientific projects and also looking at their GUE's creative aspect as well.
So the other side of it, where you have to document and post and write articles, you're obviously keeping up with that. How were you finding that? Was it hard to balance the two, or was it diving during the day, hitting the computer at night, making social media posts? How were you finding that? Because I know for me, I find the social media posts extremely difficult. I'm horrible at making reels. I'm horrible at making posts. So how are you balancing that?
I wasn't. No, it was hard. It was hard to keep up. It was very hard to keep up. So I would say, like, I probably did do too much. I would say that. And so, as you've seen, I was basically traveling nonstop, diving nonstop for that first half of the year. I threw myself into everything. I think I was on like 6 or 7 courses at this point, and so definitely I did burn out a bit. I got ill a few times, so that's why the latter half of the year I definitely had a more balanced approach. But I guess by not sleeping, I was very good at the fact that whenever I was traveling, I made the blog post, for example, as a diary. And so every time, if I was on a bus for a few hours, or if I was driving somewhere, or if I had a moment of free time, I would write down my thoughts from that day or anything that I wanted to share and discuss. And so when it came to the end of the month, I had set myself a deadline for submitting a blog and a YouTube video. And so when it came to like that last week, I had mostly done the articles or blog posts because I had kind of done it on the fly as I was going along. And then with the YouTube videos, I did it in the way that I guess you're not supposed to create story arcs. So I got all the footage, filmed as I was going, filming whatever I wanted. And then the last few days of each month, I sat down, looked at all what I had and thought, how can we make a story out of this? Which is not what you're meant to do. But I found actually that style worked best for me because my times were like changing so much and I had so many things going on that I was almost again using the blogs at the very beginning, again, like a diary entry. But I guess if you watch all my videos as I go throughout the year, I become more and more not strict with what I was saying, but I used each of the videos to not only talk about what I was doing each month, but also incorporating like a theme or a message. So what I mean by that is a few months ago, I did a video talking about my year and my month or what I was doing in that. But in that, I ran themes of talking about what it meant to be a recreational diver and how we should encourage more of that in the GUE space. Or I was talking about my evolution of my trim and different things like that. So I used each one as a diary, which again helped with the mental capacity of, I just need to put down what I did without making it, I guess, fancy or having a set message. But as I went through then, I started to make voiceovers with different messages that I wanted to convey, if that made sense. But yes, it was hard at times, but I loved it, so I didn't mind.
So you were saying, it's May coming on June. At this point, you're kind of starting to feel a little bit just, I don't want to say burnt out, but burnt out.
I was, don't worry.
Yeah. So tell me about, the following months. Were you just taking it relaxed? Were you obviously still trying to get some courses in? Tell me about the latter half of the year.
So I was kind of strategic in the content I was putting out, because I guess you've noticed that I did like a lot of different types of things in March and April especially. So I had quote unquote saved some content, and so I had split up again the things that I did in those months into what I talked about in the summer months. So I was, I think 2 or 3 quote unquote months behind what I was actually doing, so I could afford some time to take some weeks off, in a sense. So for the month of June, I think I was just relaxing, in all honesty of the word, or I guess recovering a bit from burnout and trying not to become ill. But I was still doing some content and things, which is really nice. And then I actually also had to leave Sardinia a bit earlier. I was planning to stay in Sardinia until mid-June, but I had to leave to get a very urgent visa for a trip which I had spontaneously planned in August. And the reason why I had to leave in June is because at the time, I think due to like the backlog of passports and security because of COVID and everything, we had like an 8-month waiting list for this certain visa. It was an American visa, but it was a 10-month one. And so I had to, basically, I wrote a letter to the embassy and they said you had to come on this precise day, which was exactly in the middle of the Sardinian trip, so I had to leave early. So I was doing a lot of, I guess, in June, taking it more slowly, but also planning the next few months as well by trying to get all these different types of visas and sorting out my plans. So it looked like I did something every month, but certain months I was taking it slow and having backdated content, which is fine. So July, we closed the scholarship applications for next year in July. So I actually personally looked through every single of the scholarships applications. I looked at everyone's essays, I looked at everyone's videos, and I helped choose the next scholar and the next cohort of our, for example, trainees and who we wanted to give help to. When I say I gave personalized feedback to everyone, it took weeks of my time, but I was so enthused about it. I didn't mind. So I guess that summer month was for working. But I did do one of my other courses in July, which was a documentation diver course over in the Netherlands. That was at the very end, I think end of June or beginning of July. So I did do another course, and again, that was super interesting because that was more based on photography and videography, dive planning, and helping people create a little project at the end. So yeah, that was super fun. I got to meet some amazing people in the Netherlands, the GUE community group.
I guess roughly how many applicants do they get per year? Does it go up every year? But what is the rough number of applicants that apply?
I think it has gone up every year. So I was the second scholar that they've ever had. The first scholar was a girl called Annika, and she got the scholarship like in 2019 in New Zealand. So not helpful in terms of COVID and being in New Zealand, because I know they were very strict in their COVID protocols. So she had her year extended a few times, obviously due to not being able to maybe travel or do some of the courses that she wanted to do during that time. So I was the first person that was doing this scholarship in a year, basically. And so I really tried to push the social media aspect and the engagement aspect. So I think the amount of applicants did go up quite a bit. I would also say that we had, at the time, already filtered out people who maybe weren't eligible or didn't fit the application process already. So I was looking at those who had applied and had passed our initial test. So this wasn't everyone who applied, but I think I looked at more or less pushing 50 or 60 different applications.
And then the documentation course, where you went, how'd it go?
So the documentation course was, again, so based on what I said before, wasn't one that I was going to do because I was already wanting to do the scientific diving course, and I did that photogrammetry course right back in February. So I didn't know if there was going to be if it was going to be quote unquote worth it to do the documentation course, because I didn't know how much it was going to be overlapping with learning about 3D modeling and then learning maybe some scientific work. Actually, I'm really glad I did it in the end because it fills in the gaps between the two, and everybody that went on the course wanted to take away different things from the course, and they did. So it was a course where you can really hone into your weaknesses and what you want to achieve. The course is structured in a slightly different way to both the photogrammetry and the scientific diver, whereas a project that you have to make at the end, like a deliverable. And so we were making a video, and you had to define like the project goals and things at the very beginning, and then you went through your dive project working through different aspects of the course on each dive. So, for example, I really wanted to learn more about project management. So I was the manager of our group, and there were a few individuals there who really wanted to learn more about the photogrammetry side, but also maybe underwater videos and surveys. So they would be the individuals that we will be filming doing some survey techniques. And then lastly, there were two individuals there who are upcoming underwater documentation and documentary makers, and they really want to test out their approved new full face masks, which is different from the normal GUI configuration, which is why they got special permission from HQ to do so. Now, they really want to use the time, the skills section during the course to test this out, but also then they wanted to practice filming this on the course as well. So they were looking at all things lighting and working with their new gear. So you see, everyone came in with different goals in this course, and so it was really interesting to see how we all worked together to make those different goals happen. So I really liked it in the fact that everyone could take away different things, and it is different to photogrammetry and the scientific diving course. So we did like a little project filming things in a lake, and we were looking at the guys who were doing some documentation work in the future. They want to test out their new headset to basically bring the experience of underwater exploration and discovery to the user in real time. We would be filming them and they would be doing surveys, but they would be basically commentating on what they were seeing using this headset. So that's what we were doing.
So a course that you weren't sure you were going to take, you absolutely loved it. And then at this point, where is your plan? Is it still kind of like, okay, I'm leaving the rest of the year open? Did you know where you were going after this course, or was it kind of open for whatever's coming your way?
It was, I guess, a mixture of the two again. So middle of the year, I knew I wanted to go back to the conference. So GUI holds a conference every 2 years, but it just so happened that they were holding the conference in 2022 and 2023 because the 2023 conference was a special 25th anniversary. Now, as the GUI scholar, again, should have said this at the very beginning, but as well as what you get, you also get one free round trip to a conference. And at the time of my conference in 2022, they flew me over. I was actually in America at the time, just on the opposite side. I was in California at the time. So they paid for me, they paid for my travel and that conference ticket. However, what you also get with GUI is your platinum membership for the year, which takes into account of when you do the free training, when you sign up, you have a registration fee. If you have a platinum membership, you do not have that registration fee. So that allowed me as the scholar to pick and choose the courses that I want to do so after talking to the instructor, of course, and asking their permission and talking about if it's okay for me to join. It allowed me to join super easily without paying that fee. Now, what you also get in the platinum membership is a free ticket to the GUI conference. So I had this other ticket and I also really wanted to go to the 25th conference. So I was doing a bit of odd jobs on the side at that point to save up money to go back to Florida because I really wanted to speak at the conference. So middle of the year, I spoke to Jarrod and said that I wanted to speak at the conference. So I was planning a trip back to Florida to recount my year and also to meet the next scholar in person, but in Florida. I thought it was really important to kind of go back and close off the year because as well, I've become so much more confident as well. I wanted to see people that I hadn't seen last year and just thank people again for like all the help they've given me. It was well worth going. So I had then planned on going back to Florida in November. So I had this goal of going back to America in November, and then I had planned to go back to both Sardinia and Egypt in October just before that to maybe try and get a technical upgrade. So, okay, for the record, I was not ever trying to get a technical upgrade on my fundamentals, but I thought that I really want to do so because if you're becoming an instructor, again, misconception, you don't have to have a technical pass on paper. You just have to, as a prerequisite, make sure that your skills are up to the technical level. Now, I just thought it would be really good if I get a technical pass to kind of prove to myself and have it on paper that I was at this technical ability level. So I was planning to do that, but just, I guess, some sort of like life situations got in the way. So due to personal reasons, I didn't go away in September and October. But again, it was very good in the fact that I'd saved some things content-wise that I could promote. So that was all good. And I guess another thing about having plans cancelled and then going back home for a bit is that I actually got to meet the next scholar in person before we all went to America because he was actually based in the UK at the time. So it was good in the fact that I could go and see him. So yeah, that was really cool. But then I guess then the main thing I did between, let's say, August and October was, again, nothing to do with diving at all, but it was something to do with my wanting to further my experience in the expedition space. So I actually went on a cruise. I went on a scientific cruise expedition throughout the entire month of August, and this is what I was getting my visa for in June. And so it was with a company called Inkfish Expeditions. It was incidentally, Annika, the last scholar, now works for them. And we went and sampled deep sea creatures from Hawaii to Mexico, like through all of August. So that was super cool to do.
Just random question. So when you went back to the conference in November, does that at that point, is that kind of the wrap up of the scholarship year? And you're kind of like handing the torch over to the next candidate?
Yes, yeah. So typically it's like between conferences, or if there's not a conference, like there's no conference this year, but it'll still be roughly, I guess, we say it's a year, but it's like November to November. So it's when the conference would normally be. So that was like, I guess, my official handing over of the torch per se.
What were the feelings there? Well, I'm sure it was like bittersweet, but also at this point, I feel like you had to have known that there was a lot of doors that opened over the course of your year of the scholarship. I'm assuming, correct? But it still must have been kind of bittersweet to be like, oh, it's over. This memorable lifetime memory.
For sure. Again, so many doors were opening. It was honestly a bit scary. And I just, especially in the latter half of the year, I mean, yes, plans fell through, but I still had like these amazing experiences, which came out quite organically. So this expedition in August was never on my radar. The scholars are also amazing. We always try and pay it forward to the next person. So I was super lucky in the fact that I was a scientist who could actually help out on this expedition, but B had the time and the freedom to allow me to go and help on this expedition. So again, it wasn't about diving at all, but it really showed like the power of the GUE community and how like special all these individuals are. So just like really quickly, the expedition was looking at deep sea amphipods, so little creatures like at the depth of the sea, and we put down these robots, we call them landers, and we just were seeing what was there, had cameras on them, bait on them, so could basically help the scientists conduct science. Just seeing that, and also the Milky Way, the stars on that trip. I have never seen anything like it. Like, I was once driving a Zodiac in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. We were so far away from the mothership that there were no lights anywhere, and the stars the Milky Way was basically a milky rainbow, and you could see it right the way from one end to the other because I was just in complete darkness, surrounded by complete ocean. I just had this moment being like, what is actually my life now? Like, how did I come and do this? So it is super grateful. So those are connections. So the non-diving but GUE related connections. And then throughout September and October, I used that time of when I couldn't go out diving to these other places to stay and make connections in other space, talk to other companies, and again, talking to the other scholars. So it's amazing to see like what can come of it. And so, yeah, I'm still so excited in the future, but it was bittersweet, I'm not going to lie. When I eventually got to Florida, I had a few weeks traveling around. So I met Gemma again, which was super lovely. And we're doing some recreational workshops around Florida. And then seeing everyone come into the conference in November and realizing like this was like, I guess, my last official times as the scholar was so bittersweet. But it was, I guess, a mixture of emotions. Like, firstly, I had made a video presentation and I was super proud of it. And like, there was a lot of emotions in that. So it was more, I was very nervous in the fact that I wanted to showcase my year in like the best light it could be. I was also so ready for, I guess, not the year to end, but, I couldn't have kept up the pace for like that amount of time. And then I was equally excited to do all the things and make all the connections happen. So I remember after the conference, like the first night, I do not think I slept at all because I was so buzzed from the conference and meeting people and then just ready to jump into the next projects. And yeah, like it was just exciting times.
I'm sure it must have been really difficult to sleep just because, I mean, you're coming off of an amazing year and then at the end of it, come to this conference with all these people, basically feeling more involved with the community and seeing what it could do for you. I'm sure that was just an absolutely amazing experience. So at the beginning of this, one of the things that you were saying is you wanted to highlight and bring up the recreational side of GUE. As of today, what are some things that have been done? What are some things that you want to do? Are there plans to kind of move forward on that? Is there a plan in place? I don't want to say has that goal been reached, but where are you in that goal?
It's something which is both a long-term and a short-term goal because I know that we can't change, I guess, perceptions of the wider industry overnight, let's say. But I guess you can always see the power of like the butterfly effect because even at that conference, there were two guys that came over from New York who are recreational divers, and there were some individuals from Panama City in Florida that came over. And actually, one of them, she wasn't going to go to the conference because she was a quote recreational diver. And then at the end of the year, she came to the conference because she saw that I was there and she became empowered to do so. So I feel like we should never underestimate the power of changing somebody's life. And that's like a butterfly effect. So I feel like in those small moments where individuals are more empowered or encouraged to go to things like conferences or sign up for things, then yes, it has been achieved. On a global scale, we still have work to do. But from the conference, GUE hired me. So I now work for HQ part-time as for now, but it is everything to do with helping build up the scholarship program, the legacy project, helping scientific diving become more recognized, and also helping with project coordination. Now, incidentally, we're about to release this tomorrow. So from the 7th of April, we are releasing something called the Project Portal, where it's a real tool for young scientists or young divers to start making projects, because I noticed that there was a real disconnect. So we have these amazing, well-experienced individuals making these super complicated projects, what GUE define as truly explorational. And then there's like people who are equally as passionate, but do not know where to start or feel that their quote unquote project isn't worthy enough to warrant promotion because it's just looking at, let's say, seahorses at 3 meters. And so I really wanted to end that disconnect. And so we're making like basically a library of different resources that individuals can pick and choose from to help establish their own projects. And so this is something that's coming in the future to really help young divers become more motivated to have smaller recreational style projects. So this is just one initiative, and so lots to come in the future as well.
So where are you currently in your recreational instructor journey?
So I did the ITC, and so I have also then now got a technical upgrade, which is really cool. So in terms of the prerequisites, I am getting there. My goal for this next year is to try and get the remaining signatures, as many as possible at least. And so I am going back over to Sardinia in June to do some Rec 1 internships. I know it's quite hard to find some Rec 1 courses, hence why I want to change that. But I'm interning with Gemma, and she's doing some Rec 1 courses, and that's what I want to see and also help out on and try and get some signatures. Again, the good thing about the instructor progress, some of it you can do online. For example, if you want to do any presentations, you don't have to intern classes to do so. You can do it, for example, as you and me are talking over remotely and things like that. So that is my next step for the next few months, is to get some internships going and to get some signatures. But yeah, hopefully 1 or 2 years. But I know that people around me are like, when are you doing it? When are you doing the IE? So we shall see.
I know, kind of like you were saying, the butterfly effect, but somebody that is kind of on the outside looking in, that wants to look at the recreational side or wants to help grow and build that community, what are some things that they can do to help grow the recreational side and get the word out? I mean, I know there's the, kind of the social media posts, this and that, but what could be done to help that cause?
I think if they were talking to individuals who want to get started, first of all, encouraging or showing that there is an option to do, for example, like the Rec 1 courses, and not just say, you can do a different agency, which is, for example, cheaper and quicker, and then we can quote unquote hop into GUE a different way. I would really encourage among your circles to talk about the benefit of diving in a certain way or diving in this particular way at the very beginning, because it really helps your foundational course. As well, if you have local GUE instructors in the area, encouraging them to also advertise the fact that you can do Rec 1 or Rec 2 courses as a way to get divers involved, but also as, for example, Recreational 2 as a good way to improve your technical diving levels if you want to do that, if you so choose. Or even just knowing how to rescue somebody, which is amazing in like that recreational setting as well. I think in terms of the everyday person as well, I think GUE instructors, I know we said aside from social media, but for example, I know Gemma is really good at this in posting her classes or posting certain exploits wearing a recreational configuration. For example, sometimes wearing wetsuits or rash guards, or if she is wearing double sometimes in a recreational setting. Now, this is actually a lot more powerful than one thinks, because I never thought that I could wear like a single tank and a wetsuit as a GUE diver. And then I realized that was completely wrong. Even just anything that you post, be mindful that it has an impact, and even what you wear can really show somebody what the agency is all about.
Jenn, I really, really appreciate you coming back on for round 2. It was great to hear a little bit more in depth on your whole year, a year that obviously has changed your life, a year that will change many lives in the future for future scholars. So I think this is a great, a chance for them to hear about the opportunities that they could have and the opportunities that you developed for yourself. So I really appreciate it. It was amazing to have you back on, and thank you for making the time. And I look forward to seeing what things are in store for you in the future. And also, hopefully we can get a dive in at some point, either, the rest of this year or at some point later. Oh
my God, no, of course. No, thank you so much. Honestly, it's amazing. And it's definitely like changed my life. I just never expected to have like this second diving family at all from this, or even to get employed, or even to have the connections. So it is, it's been certainly amazing. And yes, we should dive at some point.
Offgassing, a scuba podcast.